Eudaimanya, systems and frameworks to improve habits, mind, and life.
Welcome to Eudaimanya. Today, we're diving into an explainer of Nassim Nicholas Taleb's profound and massively influential book, The Black Swan, The Impact of the Highly Improbable. This book addresses a completely recognizable human problem: our absolute blindness to massive, unpredictable events that completely reshape our world, and how our own minds continuously deceive us into thinking we actually have control over the unknown. The author guides us through a pretty fascinating intellectual journey to tackle this. Here is what we're going to cover. 1. The illusion of predictability. 2. The Thanksgiving turkey problem. 3. Mediocristan versus Extremistan. 4. Stories and silent evidence. And 5. How to handle uncertainty. Let's jump right in.
Part 1. The illusion of predictability.
Think about this totally recognizable human situation for a second. We live in a society that is constantly disrupted by massive, groundbreaking shifts. Yet we make the exact same habitual error over and over again, assuming the future will simply mirror the past. We rely heavily on experts who use backward-looking models to tell us what's coming next, and the consequence? We are completely blindsided. The book points out that everything of real historical significance, from the sudden rise of the internet to the massive market crash of 1987, was entirely unpredicted by the consensus. We like to pretend we can forecast history, but history doesn't crawl. It makes massive jumps. To explain this whole phenomenon, Taleb formally defines these shocks as black swans. The name actually comes from an ancient belief that all swans were white, a deeply held absolute conviction that was completely shattered by the discovery of a single black swan in Australia. According to the book, a black swan has 3 principal characteristics. First, it's an outlier, meaning it's incredibly rare. Second, it carries an extreme impact. And third, and this is the trickiest part, human nature makes us concoct explanations for it after the fact, making it feel perfectly predictable in hindsight. That brings us to part 2, the Thanksgiving turkey problem. So, to really understand why we're so incredibly vulnerable to these black swans, we have to ask, why is learning from the past actually dangerous? We naturally try to learn from observation, right? It makes sense. But we habitually err by believing that an accumulation of past safety guarantees future security. We look at a trend going up and just assume it'll keep going up forever. The catastrophic consequence here is that our confidence peaks right at the exact moment we're actually in the most danger. The author uses this absolutely brilliant, darkly comedic analogy to illustrate this flaw. Imagine a turkey being fed every single day. Every feeding firms up the bird's belief that humans are friendly and looking out for its best interests. Its confidence increases as those friendly feedings grow. But on the Wednesday afternoon before Thanksgiving, something incredibly unexpected happens. The crucial point here is that the turkey's feeling of safety reaches its absolute maximum right when the risk of slaughter is highest. This perfectly illustrates what the book calls the problem of induction. 1,000 days of safety absolutely do not prove the absence of risk. This proves that naive projections from past data can lead to fatal, catastrophic surprises. That turkey was literally learning backward. Its experience actually had negative value. It learned to be completely comfortable precisely when it should have been terrified. Moving on to part 3, Mediocristan versus Extremistan. Think about how we usually try to understand data. We humans make the fatal error of measuring all risks using average-based tools, like the famous bell curve. Now, this works perfectly fine for physical limitations, but we mistakenly apply it to complex social and economic realities. The consequence? It completely blinds us to environments where one single anomaly changes the entire total. To solve this categorization problem, Taleb brilliantly contrasts 2 realms. He calls the first Mediocristan. In Mediocristan, extreme events just don't impact the whole. For instance, if you take 100 people and add the heaviest human on Earth to the group, the average weight barely changes at all. But then there's Extremistan. In Extremistan, one single event can dominate the entire phenomenon. If you take those same 100 people and add the wealthiest person on Earth, suddenly the average wealth skyrockets. Extremistan is ruled entirely by the singular and the accidental. According to the book, Biology, things like height, weight, and daily calorie consumption all belong to the mild risks of Mediocristan. But almost all modern social and economic matters belong to the wild risks of Extremistan. Wealth, financial markets, the success of a book, or deaths in modern warfare, they are not constrained by physical limits. Because we live in Extremistan, but process information as if we live in Mediocristan, we leave ourselves completely exposed to wild, Extremistan-style black swans.
Let's look at part 4, stories and silent evidence.
So why on earth don't we see these risks clearly? Well, the book argues our minds actually suffer from 3 ailments when dealing with history, which Taleb calls the triplet of opacity. First, the illusion of understanding. We mistakenly think we know what's going on in a highly random world. Second, retrospective distortion. We assess matters only after the fact, making history look perfectly organized in textbooks. And third, the overvaluation of facts. We blindly listen to authorities who categorize and simplify chaos, giving us a completely false sense of control. This all builds into what's known as the narrative fallacy. The human mind literally hates abstract randomness. It costs our brain way too much energy to process. So what do? We naturally substitute complex, chaotic realities with simple, logical stories. We fall victim to this fallacy by inventing post-facto narratives to make highly random events feel predictable and inevitable. A textbook or a historical account shields us from the true complexity of the world, but by imposing these neat, tidy stories, we completely blind ourselves to the massive role of pure chance. Furthermore, the book warns against what it calls the silent evidence trap. Our perception of success is totally skewed because we only ever see the survivors. We look at a wildly successful entrepreneur and try to extract a magical formula for success, entirely ignoring these silent cemetery of people who used the exact same formula, but failed simply because they lacked luck. By only studying the winners, we grossly underestimate the risk and randomness present in the real world. And finally, part 5. How to handle uncertainty. Given all these cognitive flaws and invisible risks we've talked about, how does the author suggest we actually make decisions? Here is the real practical utility of this entire philosophy. Instead of futilely trying to predict specific extreme events, which the book proves is literally impossible, Taleb proposes a strategy built entirely on preparedness and asymmetry. You can't control the occurrence of a black swan, but you can absolutely change your exposure to it. The book's solution is the Barbell Strategy, which basically advises gambling pennies to win dollars. This means aggressively exposing yourself to positive black swans. These are environments where failures are super cheap, but the upside is a massive breakthrough. Think venture capital, scientific research, or writing a book. Conversely, you must be hyper-conservative about negative black swans that could cause total ruin, like taking on massive financial debt. You essentially want to open yourself up to serendipity and luck while completely insuring yourself against catastrophe. Taleb concludes his exploration with a truly beautiful philosophical thought. We spend so much time sweating the small stuff, don't we? Getting angry over a bad cup of coffee or a delayed train, all while completely forgetting the immense improbability of our own existence. Imagine a speck of dust next to a planet 1 billion times the size of the Earth. The mere fact that you were born is a highly improbable, monstrously lucky event. You, yourself, are a black swan. Ultimately, the book challenges us to rethink our worldview entirely. We have to abandon our reliance on fragile predictions and instead build real robustness into our lives. We have to embrace the unknown, expose ourselves to positive accidents, and stop acting like we have the future all figured out. Because out there in Extremistan, the next black swan is already waiting. So ask yourself, are you building your life in Mediocristan, or are you actually preparing for the black swans of Extremistan?
If this video was useful, give it a like, subscribe, and share. More systems and frameworks in the next Eudaimanya video.